Okay, let's not get distracted. Okay. Yeah, it's just some childish, some silly little things. I mean, it's just they've come up with something else. Let's go get back to this, guys. All right. Okay. So I want to give you because we're going to defeat this. Islam is the fifth kingdom, both biblically and historically. We're going to do that together. Okay. But so that I'm going to walk through this, and the way I've broken this down is for a lay person to understand. So pay attention to this. Take your notes if you want to take notes on this stuff. How you will defeat this entire argument that Islam is the fifth kingdom. So again, the background for beginners, I call it. Okay. First, the Roman Empire is what these guys are going to be discussing about. So we're going to learn a little bit about it. So the Roman Empire did not simply vanish in one clean moment. It changed over centuries. That is why Muslims cannot just say things like Rome ended in 1453, which is important for them for this argument of Islam is the fifth kingdom. It's important for them to take 1453 as the benchmark for when Rome ended. Now, they can't just say Rome ended in 1453 as if everyone agrees with it and it's done, and the matter is just simple. It's not. It's become something that, kind of loosely the scholarship will like, yeah, whatever, they use that as a benchmark. But when they get serious about it, it isn't like they seriously say, yes, absolutely, on a scholarship level, yes, we will say 1453 is the time when Rome ended. So let's understand a little bit of Rome. Classical Rome began in Italy, and Latin was the elite language of the older Roman world. Okay, the empire later shifted eastward. So here it is, Rome. I want you to play this movie in your head. Okay, that started on the western side of it, and later on the empire shifted eastward. And then Constantinople, Turkey, became New Rome and the capital of Eastern Roman Empire. So now you got a Western Empire and you got a Roman Eastern Empire. And the capital is sitting in Constantinople in the Eastern Empire. The Western Roman Empire is usually said to have fallen in 476 AD. So 476 AD, you have the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The Eastern Roman Empire, however, continued from Constantinople. And we call it the Byzantine, but its people often identified as Romans. So the people themselves identified as Romans, okay? All right? Now, let me see this if I can go put it a little back in there. All right. So, in 1204, something happens. In 1204, the Latin Crusaders capture Constantinople, the Eastern, empire, during the Fourth Crusade. The Romans are there, and the Latin Crusaders, instead of going after the Muslims, they start fighting internally. They capture Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade. And then the old capital, Constantinople, fell. The government was dissolved, and there were several successor states emerged. That means there were other states that emerged. Once you're broken up, someone will claim, I'm the original, I represent the original, yada, yada, yada. So they're called successor states. Okay? And so the old capital fell, the government was dissolved in 1204 after the Latin Crusaders came in and captured Constantinople. Okay? And several successor states emerged. Among them were Nicaea, remember the name? Trebizond, Epirus, and the Latin Empire. So you got all these bunch of small little successor states that after it's all split up, the Eastern Empire, Rome, has been taken over by the Latin Crusaders. Now, about 50 years, just circa underneath that, later, one of those namely Nicaea, the Empire of Nicaea, retook Constantinople. So they came back and recaptured it. And they claimed to restore the Roman Empire. Got it? So we understand that Western Roman Empire had fallen in 476. Eastern Roman Empire has a capital in Constantinople. It's huge. It's continuing on. But in 1204, almost in the 13th century, 1204 is considered 13th century. Okay? In 1204, the Latin Crusaders came in and captured Constantinople. The capital fell, the government was dissolved, several successor states emerged. Among them was Nicaea, Trebizond, Epirus, and Latin Empire. But we're going to pay attention to the Empire of Nicaea here. Now, after they've been successful in 1204, in comes just under 50 years, the Empire of Nicaea that was just broken apart from the original gang now comes and attacks Constantinople and takes it over. And they claim to restore the Roman Empire. That happens in 1261. In 1261, that's what they do. Now, keep that aside, okay? Now, you've learned what happened in the 13th century. Something happens about almost 300 years later. Sorry, 200 years later. In the 15th century, specifically 1453, remember the Empire of Nicaea is taken over in 1261, the Ottoman Turks come in and they attack and capture Constantinople. In 1453, this is what the Muslims will keep on saying. The Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople then, correct? All right, so now we know we're walking through history, we're walking through timelines, okay? You had the Latins come in, Crusaders, attack it in 1204. They became successful. They took over Rome. They said they restored Rome and they took over Rome, over Eastern Empire, Constantinople. 1261, one of the successor states that broke off from the original Rome, namely Nicaea, comes back, attacks Constantinople. They took it back, and now they're saying they restored it as the Roman Empire. And then 200 years later, in walks the Turks, the Ottomans, and they come and attack Constantinople, and they took over. And their guy who helped them take over, his name was Mehmed II. Mehmed II. M-E-H-M-E-D. Mehmed II. Mehmed II, after he took over Constantinople, he claimed the title Kaiser-i-Rum. Kaiser-i-Rum. Pay attention to that title. Kaiser-i-Rum. The title means something. The title means Caesar of Rome. So he took over the Constantinople at that point, and he gave him his title. He claimed the title of being Caesar of Rome. Now, this Ottoman Empire, the Turks, they were abolished. The Ottoman Caliphate was abolished by the Turkish Republic in 1924. So they ceased to be the Islamic Caliphate. Okay? They ceased to be the Islamic Caliphate. Now, this is your background. I'm giving you this background because it's important in our argument, which is where we're going to prove that Islam is not the fifth kingdom in Daniel 2, as the Muslims have concocted up. Remember, not a single serious, credible scholar, anti-Christian, secular, Christian, Jewish, even Islamic scholar ever says that Islam is the fifth kingdom. This is pulled out of the proverbial rear end of TikTok Muslims and Lesbiano. Made it up in 2025. But we are indulging them in the conversation to show that even their made up stuff, we will absolutely belt it. Okay? So now I gave you a little bit of history of Rome, what's happened in there. Okay? Now, in a layman picture would be, if I'm going to give you a layman picture out there, the layman picture would be that if a company's headquarters is captured, its leadership line breaks, and several spin-off groups all claim to be the real continuation of the original company, you already know that would be considered a serious break. If one spin-off later then retakes the headquarters, that may be a restoration claim, but it does not erase the earlier picture that that company's continuation took a serious break. It was cut off. Okay? Now, let's do this nice and easy. Now, they are going to play in Daniel 2, 31 to 35, 39 to 45. Okay? And it's talking about the dream, where about the statue. And what I'm going to do is, this kind of thing messed up in here actually. We all know what was taking place as far as the statue goes. So I'm not going to go into the verses too deep. I'm going to directly go into the refutation, and then I will discuss different parts of those verses. Okay? So as far as what the dream was, it's basically saw the statue, and the statue was made up of different metals, different parts. First you had Babylon, and it talks about all the different parts or layers of empires, by the way, okay? So it talks first about Babylon, then it was taken over by Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome. And Rome becomes divided. This is what the Muslims will claim. Therefore, the stone that comes in and destroys that statue must come after Rome divides. And then they say Islam comes after Rome divides, so Islam fits the fifth kingdom motif. Okay? That's what they want to sit down and say. That Islam fits the fifth kingdom motif. So, what have we learned? The Muslims will claim that Daniel 2 is chronological, let's say. First you have Babylon, then the Medo-Persian Empire, then the Greece, then Rome. Rome becomes divided, therefore the stone must come after Rome divides, and Islam comes after Rome divides, so Islam fits, Islam is the fifth kingdom. So we are going to do into the first of our refutations. We got multiple refutations, about 8 or 9 of them. How we're going to destroy this whole rubbish. So the first claim they make is that the stone that comes and destroys the statue comes after Rome divides. Our simple answer to them is saying, can you show to me in the text where it says that the text, where the text says that it is after it divides? Show me where it says after it divides. The timing phrase is actually in the days of the kings, it says. It never says after it divides. It says in the days of these kings, plural. Remember, Rome was still Rome before it was divided, right? So the stone can come during the Roman rule before the later division. That is our claim back to them. He says, where do you come up with this concept that the stone comes and destroys things only after it divides? They needed to do that. They need to push that made up stuff on their head. They need to claim that. If they don't claim that it does it after Rome divides, boom, they're in trouble. Everything, the house of cards falls down. So our question is, where in the verse does it say that after it divides, the stone comes? It only says in the days of the kings. It means the Rome was still around, right? In his days, the stone could have come before it divided. There's no, it must come after it divided. Show me where in Daniel will says the stone comes after the kingdom divides. It does not say that. It says in the days of those kings. And a way to explain it to you is this, folks. A passage can describe features without making each feature a separate timeline step. If I say, for example, the king was powerful, later weak, partly strong, partly brittle, and in the days of those kings, a new movement began, excuse me, that does not prove that the movement began only after the weakness of the king appeared. That is why we say a passage can actually describe features without making each feature like a chronological timeline stamp and a step. This must happen first, then this happened first, then this happened. No, it can just describe what happened. The chronological part that we will say yes happened is that the empires were first Babylon, then Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome. That part is chronological. But within each part, inside of each part, the details of features within each part doesn't have to be chronological. Who said that? The verse doesn't. The verse says, in the days of those kings. So, cross-examination. Okay? I've done a little bit on cross-examination for you guys. What can you ask them? What should you ask the Muslims in cross-examination? Where does Daniel 2 say after the division? Does Daniel 2:44 say after it divides, or does it say or in the days of these kings? Tell us, was Rome still Rome before it divided, or was it something else? It was Rome. We know that. If yes, why can't in the days of the kings, that particular remark include the earlier Roman period? Why can it not? It absolutely can. Are you reading after the division from the text, or you're inserting your stuff into the text? They are inserting it. The likely Muslim reply would be, but the context is also chronological. They will say the context is also chronological. I got to do this puzzle stuff here, dude. There we go. I got it in the first chat. Okay. Our counter is going to be, hey, the succession of the four kingdoms is chronological. We'll give you that. But verses 41 to 43 describes the fourth kingdom's characteristics. It says it's strong, it's brittle, it's mixed, it's divided. The description doesn't tell us if there is first it was strong, then it was brittle, then it was mixed, then it was divided. There's no chronological time stamp in there. It could have been strong, and then it got divided, and that made it brittle, and it got mixed, or it could be strong, and it got divided, and it got mixed, then it got brittle. It could be anything. So a characteristic of it is not going to make it in such a way that you can prove that it is all chronological. You're assuming this. Why is this important for us, folks? Because they must have the stone coming after it divides. If it doesn't come after it divides, everything falls apart for them. So they're going to start inserting, inferring, making claims out the wazoo. Now, speaking of divided kingdom, they say that the Muslim claim would be the feet and toes. When it's describing it, it means Rome's split into east and west. The stone must come after the east and west split. They'll say, oh, it's a divided kingdom. The stone must come after it. We've already challenged them on it. When the stone comes, this is not second. This is second refutation. We're going to just annihilate all their stuff one by one. Just absolutely annihilate it. Now they want to claim, they want to ignore the what we just brought up. We'll say, okay, let's go with this divided kingdom. You're saying they're two separate kingdoms. Why does a divided kingdom have to be two separate kingdoms? That is what we're going to challenge them. They're going to say the divided kingdom means two separate kingdoms. The feet and toes, Rome split into east and west, and the stone must come after east and west, is what they will say. But our counter is going to be, Daniel says a divided kingdom, singular. It does not say that it's split into kingdoms, plural. Verse 43 explains the division as iron and clay trying to mix but not holding together. Where does it say it divides into two kingdoms? It says it is divided into one single kingdom. So, to give you kind of a layman explanation of what we're trying to do here, is we're trying to ask them, because again, this division is important. They have to show a division for their fifth kingdom stuff to work. We already figured out the first one, we butchered them on it. Now we're going to toy with them with many more things that they claim. So a layman explanation would be, a family can be divided without becoming two different families, right? A country can be internally divided without becoming two separate countries. We have elections every time. Democrats, Republicans, other groups. Well, I always talked about how America is a divided country. They don't believe, they haven't given the mandate to the president, blah, 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 all that other stuff. Did they become two separate countries? No. So again, when we say, it says it became a divided kingdom, singular, not kingdoms, why are you assuming a division has to mean two separate kingdoms? A family can be divided without becoming two different families. A country can be internally divided without becoming two separate countries. And Daniel's wording is about instability and internal mixture, not necessarily a formal east-west split. You see, they are going to take our book. Remember what we're doing in here. They're claiming Islam is the fifth kingdom out of their proverbial rear ends. No anti-Christian scholar, secular scholar, Christian scholar, Jewish scholar, even Islamic credible scholars, none of them say the fifth kingdom is Islam. This is made up in 2025 by absolute nincompoops here on TikTok. But we are playing around with nincompoops. We are playing with our food. We're just playing with our food. We say, okay, let's walk down this path with you. And therefore now we're going to hold everything that the verse says to what the verse says and not what they want to sit down and add to it. Right? Okay. Now cross-examination questions for this particular part where you're asking them, why do you think it's kingdoms and not kingdom, but verse only says kingdom? Why are you making it a two? So, cross-examination questions you ask Muslims. Does Daniel say two kingdoms or a divided kingdom, singular? You would have to say it says singular. Does Daniel itself explain the division as iron and clay not mixing? Yes. Are you importing East and West split into the text? Yes. Even if East and West is part of the application, where does it say the stone must wait until that split? We're going to come back to that thing, huh? That's what we're going to say. By the way, iron and clay did mix. Sorry. I said did not mix. Okay. So, now we've done two. Okay. We've already done attack number one, attack number two. Attack number one, where does it say that the rock comes after division? Attack number two, where are you even coming up with a division? This east-west division. Where does it say that? It says kingdom, not kingdoms. Where are you assuming that the rock has to come after a division? Okay. Even in this manner. Okay, now we're going to go and attack another claim by the Muslims. This is the third one. They'll claim that the stone is the Islamic Empire, the fifth kingdom of Rome. Straight up. Stone is the Islamic Empire. The stone that came to destroy all the statue is the Islamic Empire, is what they'll say. You will say, in the statue, every earthly empire that we went through, right? We went through all the Babylon, Persia, Greece and Rome, right? every earthly empire becomes another layer. Starts with gold, silver, brass, iron and clay, right? That's what the statue represents. That's what the statue shows. The stone does not become another layer. When the stone shatters the entire statue, there's no other layer to be added to a statue which is shattered. It destroys the whole statue. That means the stone that you're claiming is the Islamic empire is different kind of kingdom, not just a political kingdom. That means the stone is a different kind of kingdom. It cannot be another political kingdom. Why? Unlike each earthly kingdom in the statute that it has, which defeats the previous one and becomes another layer added to the structure, each successive empires in the statute defeated the previous one and became an added layer to the statute structure. The stone in Daniel 2 does something entirely different. It does not become another layer. It strikes the statue and shatters all the previous layers at once, replacing the entire system with a new kind of kingdom. It's a new kind of kingdom. Got it? Statue doesn't exist. A layman explanation for you is, if Islam is just another empire conquering land after Rome, it's the Islamic, it's wars and conquering land, right? It's just another empire after Rome. Then it belongs on the statue as another metal layer. It can't be the stone. Because every empire that defeats the previous empire, it gets added to the statue. Islam is not that. But Daniel's stone does not join the statue. It ends the statue system. Islam never entered the empire system. It just became another empire. It just became another empire. So the cross-examination here for you folks is this. You ask the Muslim, does the stone become a new layer on the statue? When the stone comes and attacks it, does it just kind of fuse into the statue as a new layer? No. Does it destroy only Rome? Or does Daniel 2:35 say the metals are broken together? That means all of the layers. This stone comes and destroys all of the layers. It does. It's not destroying only Rome. Remember, the Muslims are just saying, we took over Rome and only Rome. Did Islam end the empire system? All those were kingdoms or empires. Islam just came in and added another empire. Or did it become another empire is the question you ask them. Yep, it became another empire. So if Islam is another political empire, why isn't it another layer rather than the stone? Now, Muslims will come back with a different answer on it. We will talk about that in a second. So that now is our question about the stone is not just another empire layer. It doesn't layer itself onto the statue. It destroys it. Islam is just an empire. All previous empires were layering each one over on the top of the other on the statue. So one added to another layer. So technically it can't be Islam. Okay? Now, the next pitch is we're going to address something called a permanent kingdom problem. This is called a permanent kingdom problem. The Muslims will claim Islam is Daniel's kingdom because it defeated Rome and continues as a religion. Hey, not only did we defeat Rome, we continue as a religion. Your answer will be, Daniel says kingdom, not merely religion. So if they mean a political kingdom, then the caliphate ended in 1924. The Ottoman Turks who came and defeated it, their caliphate dissolved in 1924. But wait, they will say something else. They will retreat to spiritual kingdom. Well, if it's spiritual kingdom, then Christianity fits better because Christ's kingdom began during Rome before the split and it still continues right now. That kingdom hasn't been defeated. So if you want to play games, sometimes you say political kingdom, sometimes you want to play games with spiritual kingdom. Number one, you can't do that. We asked them, listen, was that kingdom dissolved and abolished in 1924 or not? The Ottoman Caliphate. Press them on that. They'll have to say yes. Now, when the Muslim will shift to kingdoms, to the kingdom is the saints or the spiritual kingdom, you say, wait, that helps Christianity if it's spiritual. Because Christianity's spiritual kingdom under Christ fits naturally. And it came before the split. So what we're trying to do here, a layman explanation of what I'm saying in here is this. If Muslims want the stone to be a political empire, the ones with war and everything else, actual on the land, when talking about conquering Rome, but then spiritual kingdom, they want to shift to that when asked why the caliphate ended. Don't let them switch categories mid-argument. The cross-examination questions they're going to ask is, does Daniel 2:44 say this kingdom shall never be destroyed? Are you identifying the kingdom with the caliphate or with Islam as a religion? Which one do you want to do? Both? That doesn't work. If the caliphate is the kingdom, then it ended in 1924. If the kingdom is spiritual you want to shift to, why is Christianity excluded? Jesus came before the divide and it continues on. We fit much better. Did Jesus' kingdom begin during Rome and continue to this date? Yes. So it fits better. Now we're going to do something else. We've been doing everything in the Bible so far, refutation. We're now going to do historical, go more deeper into the historical refutation. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be critical for them that it must be 1453 when Rome falls. If it is not 1453, they are in deep, deep trouble again. And we are going to show that 1204 fits better than 1453. So this section is where you need, again, a reminder of beginner history. So, the Roman world did not have one simple end. The Muslims want 1453 because that is when the Ottomans captured Constantinople. Our counter is that 1204 is a much stronger end to, a rupture to Rome if your criteria on Muslims is institutional continuity, i.e., if your criteria is if as an institution it ceases being continuous, that means that institution died. It ended. So if that's your criteria, Mr. Muslim, 1453 is not the benchmark. It actually happened in 1204, 200 years prior. Again, they desperately needed it to be 1453 because the Ottomans captured Constantinople then. Now, what happened in 1204? We've gone through this earlier, but we'll do the refresh real quick. The Fourth Latin Crusade, they came and captured Constantinople. Constantinople was the flourishing capital of Eastern Roman Empire, and the Latin Crusaders captured Constantinople in 1204, the capital of Eastern Roman Empire. They dissolved the government. The Latin Empire was set up in Constantinople. Byzantine successor states appeared because after they attacked 1204, they got these small little states that appeared, were all over the place. Among them was Nicaea, Trebizond, and Epirus. Nicaea is what we're going to pay attention to again. So, the Latin Empire set up in Constantinople in 1204. They took over. Continuous flow of Roman rule was ended. That breaks the direct line of Roman state continuity. When the Crusaders killed the old state, they severed direct institutional line joining from Romulus to Julius Caesar to Justinian to Alexis V. That entire line was stopped. The scholar Edward Watts we can cite for the claim that the political entity persisted without interruption and was destroyed. That's the Roman political entity, was persisted without interruption and was destroyed when the Fourth Crusade, the Latin Crusaders, came and captured the capital of Eastern Roman Empire, Constantinople. And then they dissolved its government in 1204. So, layman explanation again is, if the capital falls, the old government is dissolved, and a rival successor state starts claiming to be the real continuation. Oh yeah, we're part of the original. That still is a major break to the original. Even if one successor later on retakes the capital, that is just restoring claim after it is broken. There is a rupture. Even if it comes and retakes it 50 years later, does not prove that nothing happened in 1204. There was a cutoff. And so if Muslims want to say, we want to judge a Roman Empire ending based on its institutions being cut off, hello, it does it in 1204. Way earlier than 1453. Remember, they desperately need 1453. Because why? The Ottomans took over and captured Constantinople in 1453. But according to your own standard, there is a break in 1204. The Muslims' objective will be, wait, the Nicaea came and took it back. The Empire of Nicaea came and took it back. So that proves that Rome actually survived, that Rome wasn't split. It didn't stop, rather. There wasn't a break. There wasn't a rupture, which is nonsense. Which is absolute nonsense. The Muslim says, after 1204, the Empire of Nicaea had Roman institutions, Roman-style taxations, minted coins, and recognized the emperor. Therefore, Rome did not end in 1204. Because when the Empire of Nicaea came back, he restored all the Roman-style stuff, or at least most of it, or whatever of it, the taxation, the coins, and he recognized himself as the emperor of Rome. Therefore, Rome did not end in 1204. No. Because he comes back in 1261, it didn't end. Your counter is going to be, that proves only that there was a successor government in exile for that period of time, for that 50 years, okay? It does not erase the break. The break happens in 1204. A succession of Romans ruling breaks in 1204. Someone coming back 50 years later does not eliminate the break. And you said the standard was if there's a break in the institution, break in the Roman rule. So your counter again is going to be that proves only that there was a successor government in exile, i.e. Nicaea. It does not erase the break. If a government in exile exists, that already means that the original capital and government were lost. That's why you have a government in exile. Nicaea may claim succession, but it does not make 1204 disappear. We have scholarly support around this break. Britannica says Theodore Lascaris was the first emperor of Nicaea, which was recognized as the Byzantine government in exile. Pay attention to the name, Byzantine government in exile, and a legitimate successor during the Crusaders' occupation of Constantinople. They were Byzantines, they were not Romans. When they came back in 1261, they still weren't Romans, they were Byzantines. Anyways, that supports the idea that Nicaea was a successor exile state, but it also admits that the original capital was occupied and normal continuity was broken. So 1204 breaks it. 1204 breaks it. Period. $12.04 breaks it. I'm almost over and then we'll invite people up here. We'll be done in less than 5 minutes. The next pitch, the next thing we're going to says that if you use Nicaea to continue after 1204, you're risking Rome after 1453. Pay attention. If you want to insist that Rome continued after 1204 because of 1261, then you're risking Rome also continued after 1453. How is that possible? We'll show you. We're not necessarily saying that the Ottomans were objectively the real Roman Empire, but we're saying according to your criteria, it becomes inconsistent. By any metric you show, you either Muslims are going to accidentally show the Roman Empire ended in 1204 or it continued past 1453. Why can't we say that? Why can it not be there? What does this mean in simple terms? If a Muslim says Rome survived 1204 because a successor state inherited Roman institutions and claimed continuity, then the Muslim has to explain why the Ottomans do not also count after 1453, since Mehmed II, the guy who came and took over, attacked it, Constantinople, claimed Roman succession, and the Ottomans inherited part of the Byzantine administration. Mehmed II called himself Kaiser-i-Rum, Caesar of Rome. So he, just like 1261, this guy comes in 1453 and claims to be the Caesar of Rome. And just like 1261, they inherited the Roman institutions, government institutions. Well, guess what? The Ottomans did the same. They inherited the institutions too. So then by your standard, it clearly now 1453 does not stop the Roman Empire. It's just a continuation. Britannica says Mehmed II led the siege of Constantinople in 1453 and declared himself Kaiser-i-Rum, Roman Caesar, Caesar of Rome. The scholar Mark David Baer says in his book, The Ottomans, Khans, Caesars, and Caliphs, in there he argues that the Ottoman rulers saw themselves as new Romans and inherited the Byzantine Roman imperial identity. The book's description notes that the Ottomans saw themselves as the new Romans. Para bing, para boom. Muslims claim, oh, when they inherited the institutions, maybe it was not all of it. Oh, this is what they claim. After 1453, there was no Roman bureaucracy or Roman imperial office. After 1204, the Roman bureaucracy survived in Nicaea, but in 1453, then therefore Rome did not end in 1204, but ended in 1453. That's going to be theirs. You know what? Let me say that again. After 1453, they'll claim there was no Roman bureaucracy or Roman imperial office. They'll start making up stuff. And they say, but after 1204, the Roman bureaucracy survived in Nicaea, when Nicaea came and took it over in 1261. So in that case, the Roman Empire continued. But in here, Rome did not end in 1204. Rather, it ended in 1453. So our counter is going to be, if bureaucracy surviving means the empire survives, then the Ottomans continuing Byzantine Roman administrative structures weakens the claim that 1453 is clean, was a clean end. Nope, they were using Byzantine Roman administrative structures. If the Muslim says the Ottoman continuity was only partial, it didn't use all of it, only partial, then you ask then, how much continuity is enough? How many does it need? What percentage does it need? And if they come up with whatever number, that's all arbitrary. They pulled it out of their proverbial rear end. So layman explanation of what I'm saying in here is, if they bring the excuse of government structures continuing after they come and conquer it, and that happened with 1261, Empire of Nicaea, they continued the government structures, we'll say, hey, it continued also after 1453. Well, not that much. What is much and that much? Who says a certain percentage is good and certain percentage is bad? You're just going to make up stuff. Governments always change, right, folks? Rome itself changed many times before 1204. Do our governments change? The US wants the Democrat president and Congress and the Senate. Sometimes it is the Republicans in majority. Governments are always changing. Just because, and they're changing institutions, they're doing it, they're shutting down some institutions, they're changing the way the institutions enact. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Alexa, stop. Jesus. So, if that's the excuse, then Rome changed many times before, because there was a lot of government changes in there, and many times before 1204 and 1453. If every bureaucratic change ends an empire, Rome ended many times before. If partial continuity keeps the empire alive, then Ottomans may push continuity beyond 1453. This is why the Muslims' criterion is slippery about, it's about institutions and how much they are. And finally, we will talk about the emperor and recognition argument. The Muslims will bring another argument. Well, after 1204, there was an alive and recognized Roman emperor in Nicaea. After 1453, there was no Roman emperor. Therefore, 1453 is truly the end. Rubbish. If recognition and claiming the title of Rome, a Roman title matters, then after 1453, you still have rival Roman claims. You got number one, Mehmed II calling himself Caesar of Rome. You got the Holy Roman Emperor existing still around, saying he is the Holy Roman Emperor. You got the Russians calling themselves the Third Rome, claiming that they are the Roman emperors. So we are not saying all of these are objectively true on every case, true Roman emperors, but we are saying that the Muslims' recognition criteria does not stop cleanly at 1453. So a Muslim is trying to say that Nicaea counts because they claimed Rome and some recognized them. Our answer is fine, but others also claimed Rome after 1453. So your criterion does not prove 1453 is uniquely the end and the final end of Rome. It does not prove that. Right? So now we've walked through all of this. Well, let me stop this recording here, where I'm going to give you a summary. Closing one statement in here real quick, okay? The closing statement is this. The Islamic reading of Daniel 2 depends on forcing the stone to come after Rome divides and then anchoring the fall of Rome to 1453. Both these moves fail. First, Daniel 2 never says the stone comes after division. The verse says in the days of the kings, of these kings. Rome was Rome before it divided. So Christianity fits the timing because Christ's kingdom began during Romans' rule. Second, in 1453 is not an objective. 1453 is not an objective, clean endpoint for Rome. If you define Rome by continuous ancient statehood, 1204 is a stronger break because the Fourth Crusade captured Constantinople and dissolved the old government. If you define Rome by successor claims, inherited institutions, then 1453 does not work either because Mehmed II claimed to be Kaiser Iram, Caesar of Rome, and then you had a whole bunch of, there was the Holy Roman Emperor, and the Ottomans themselves inherited aspects of the Byzantine Roman imperial administration. Third, the stone is not another empire. Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome are layers on the statue. The stone does not become a fifth metal layer. It destroys the whole statue and becomes a mountain that fills the earth. Islam created more political empires. It did not end the empire system. The stone is supposed to end it. So it can't be Islam. Fourth, Daniel says that the kingdom will never be destroyed. If the Muslim identifies his kingdom with the caliphate, the Ottomans, then the caliphate ended in 1924. If he says his kingdom is spiritual, then Christianity again fits better because Christ's kingdom began during Rome and continues to spread. Daniel 2 does not say after the division. 1453 is not clean death of Rome. Islam is just another empire layer. The stone fits Christ's kingdom better than the caliphate. That's what it is. Thank you.